This is Davis-Monthan Air Force Base today. It sits just miles from downtown and is surrounded by the hustle and bustle of Tucson. How things have changed.
If you want to trace the history of DM back, you have to go back to 1919 when the city actually opened the first municipal airport in America. And from that time, the city leaders had negotiated back and forth with the Department of War at the time, now to modern-day Department of Defense, to establish an aviation facility here for the military.
The modern-day DM is busy, and so was that early precursor. In 1927, when the municipal airport was named for local World War I pilots Samuel H. Davis and Oscar Monthan, the most famous flyer of the day, Charles Lindbergh, in his plane, the Spirit of St. Louis, dedicated the field. That dedication was just months after his historic non-stop transatlantic flight.
The city used this as a municipal airport, but the Air Corps at that time also used it to come in for refueling, transiting between El Paso and San Diego and vice versa.
The airport kept a register of each person who stopped at Davis-Monthan.
There were some big names such as Amelia Earhart, Lieutenant Hoyt S. Vandenberg Sr., who later became the second Chief of Staff of the Air Force, four-star general. Jimmy Doolittle, in fact, Jimmy Doolittle was the first military customer here on the 6th of October, 1927. And the gentleman that started our DM registry, Dewey Simpson, is the one that actually refueled a young Captain Jimmy Doolittle at that time.
Doolittle would go on to lead the first bombing of Japan just months after that country bombed Pearl Harbor. A building at Davis-Monthan today is named in his honor. In September of 1940, Davis-Monthan became an Army airfield. Construction quickly got underway to prepare for the war everyone knew was coming.
They totally built the base at that time. The runways, the warehouses, the streets and all were actually built up in about an 8-month period. And then the following month, 1 June, the first operational commander, Brigadier General Frank Lackland, who Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio is named after, he commanded the first bombardment wing here up until the point of December the 7th, 1941, when the attack on Pearl Harbor occurred. And then those units were sent out to the West Coast to actually do maritime, submarine chasing. And just months later, again, the B-24s started showing up, the Liberators.
From gunners to pilots, the entire 11-member B-24 aircrew was trained in Tucson. Davis-Monthan was the third largest training facility in the U.S. for B-24 crews.
When the aerodrome was set up, it was set up for long-range bombing, the B-24s. And, you know, there was a crew of 11 on board, and some of the travesties of ending the war in such a rapid pace like that, truly we weren't totally prepared for it, and we were losing 2/3 of our bombers that were running missions over, enemy-occupied Europe. So we had to really rethink that strategy and advance our technologies, and DM played a vital role in that as well. In January of 1945, we transitioned to the B-29. DM actually went through about $1.5 million, $1.5 million, which at the time was an extraordinary amount of money, and it was to upgrade the facilities so that we could facilitate that training, and which we did. And a lot of the crews left here and went specifically to the Pacific to carry out those bombing range, those long-range bombing missions.
The end of World War II brought a change to DM. The base was no longer needed, so the government started storing planes in the desert. It still does that today at Davis-Monthan in an area known as the Aerospace Maintenance and Regeneration Group, AMARG officially, the boneyard to everyone. But the downtime didn't last. Soon the Cold War was in full swing. The B-29s were back and were eventually upgraded to the B-50s. DM was once again on the cutting edge, housing the first air refueling squadron.
They would take the old B-29s and they would convert them. They would put bladders in, and they actually used a hose. And they would reel the hose out, and the refueler on the other end, the bomber, would actually have a gentleman with a grapple hook that would pull in the hose, and they would literally refuel like that. An interesting part of DM history is in February of 1949, the 43rd Air Refueling Squadron and the 43rd Bomb Wing got tasked with a mission to fly the first nonstop flight around the world.
The focus during the early part of the Cold War was on planes, but quietly crews were building missile silos in the desert.
In December of 1963, the 390th Strategic Missile Wing went active. Their weapons platform was the Titan II missiles, and it was the first Titan II missile to go active in the Air Force, for the entire Air Force. And we had 18 silos located around DM, that stretched anywhere from Green Valley, which the museum is there today, all the way up to Oro Valley, and as far out as 3 Points at Ajo. So yeah, there were 18. They stayed on alert until 1984, until the Strategic Arms Treaty kicked in, and then we started inactivating those units, and they were pulled off alert at that time.
By then, the A-10, which is now so familiar in the skies above Tucson, had arrived.